Presented and produced by the National Public Housing Museum, this is Out of the Archives, an oral history podcast created from interviews with public housing residents from across the United States. We are your hosts, Jellystone
and Liu. We made it to the last episode of the season.
Woohoo! Thank you to all of our narrators this season who, through sharing parts of your life stories, have enriched our museum, influenced our praxis, and provided the material for this podcast. For me personally, they have also been a good story to listen to on long walks to work and when missing a loved one or an old home.
This season, we have heard from a wide array of narrators about how national cycles of displacement, development, and demolition have hurt thousands of public housing residents and restricted their cultural ways of life. Throughout these stories, themes that kept coming up were the importance of memory, love, and support networks for both community well-being and community organizing against powerful outside forces.
In the final episode of this season, How Can We Make It Livable for All? Housing Justice is Environmental Justice, we continue listening to residents who highlight and fight against how governmental and corporate forces make decisions that impact thousands of public housing residents' access to housing. Ms. Anna Williams from Miami, Florida, and Ms. Renee Kitt from Manhattan, New York, two neighbors from different cities, have both been engaged in community organizing against the privatization of public housing into mixed-income housing. They have even been featured in documentaries that profile the process and impact of proposed privatization and displacement of their communities.
Ms. Williams and Ms. Kitt's oral histories ask many questions.
What do we do about the land that's surrounding us? What do you mean about sustainability? And figuring out the definition about that. How can we make it livable for all?
And they honor the history of the land and the ways people supported each other before public housing existed.
Hi, I'm Anna Williams. I was born in 1954 in the old section of Miami called Overtown, where they housed all the Blacks in South Florida. It was built up with clapboard houses, no roads, outdoor plumbing. It was like a real slum back then, but everybody got along, taking care of one another. My aunt had several little houses that she built for relatives when they came over, wanted to work. They stayed with her until they were able to move out on their own and take care of themselves.
These stories serve as tools for reverence of and accountability to the land and our relationships with it. We hope these stories also empower us towards a world that centers life as we figure out how to be in right relationship with each other and the earth. And on every local level, we hope these stories remind us to center lived experience, that is, the experiences, needs, and wishes of public housing residents when it comes to decision-making about public housing.
Hello, I'm Renee Kitt. I'm a lifelong resident of the Elliott Chelsea House in New York, in the island of Manhattan, Lenape territory. Right now, I live in Chelsea. It is one of the most gentrified areas in the city. We have the High Line right across the street from us, which is a discontinued railroad. We have avenues, a school that costs at least $65,000 a year. Unfortunately, they didn't put a gym there. So at one time, the youngest children played in our yard. Let's see. I'm surrounded by brownstones. At one time, prior to the increased gentrification, we were filled with industrial sites that have now become condominiums or art galleries, gas stations that are now apartments, even though the people living there don't know, taxi depots, We are near the post office, the place where they bring the mail. So we have a lot of traffic. Lincoln Tunnel is a few blocks from where we are at. Right now, they're trying to demolish my home. So that's the Elliott Chelsea houses. And they're also trying to demolish Fulton houses. The one thing about public housing that people don't say is that we have a lot of trees. So it's very strange when you step off onto another block that all of a sudden it hits you how hot it is. Here it's cooler because our trees are like 9 stories tall. It provides us a lot of shade. So sitting down in the courtyard, it's very cool, but you feel climate change when you walk through this city. The spotted lanternfly, how hot it is in the city. But because I'm an urban farmer, to me, it's also in different areas. It's the insects, it's the pests we now have to fight. It's always figuring out something new that has to be done. What are, spider mites, the things we didn't know or have before? About 2 years ago, all of a sudden it was really smoky. And, everyone's looking around and wondering what the fire is. And we're all just smelling, and you're walking around and say, what's on fire? Only to realize it's the air. The need for water and how we use it. It's a very precious thing, and I think we've taken it for granted. Our sun, our air. What do we need to breathe to make this place livable? Climate change, it's always going to be here. We've treated our earth as if it's a garbage disposal, and it's not. You have to maintain the land. You maintain the land, we have a reciprocal relationship. It takes care of you. As people go for composting and sustainability, the part they forget about is that you have to include people. It's nice that people are composting, but this is not all done mechanically. It's done by people. And we need to be aware of the toll it can take on people. What do we do about the land that's surrounding us? Do we do pollinator gardens that will help sustain and bring more insects and things that will make life livable and intersect with the environment? What's the investment do we need? Sometimes I think the NYCHA community should be an environmental justice area on its own. How do we do it on a local level? The communities, in many cases, the things we have are used by everyone, not just the NYCHA community itself, especially our community centers. So how can we make it livable for all? And the land that's here that everyone can enjoy? What do you mean about sustainability? And figuring out the definition about that. It's not just about having, electric cars. It has to be more than that. And it always has to include people.
As Renee reminds us, we cannot separate public housing from the land on which it sits, nor can we separate the land from the people who live on and steward it. This is a fundamental truth in indigenous cultures around the globe.
But what happens when the land is stolen from the indigenous peoples who stewarded and cared for it over millennia? What happens when colonialist and capitalistic forces rip caretakers and natural resources away from the land? What happens to the land then? Does it feel grief, rage, love?
Colonialism, displacement, and demolition are intertwined forms of environmental violence. This is richly unpacked in Natasha Florentino's 2025 documentary, A Home Worth Fighting For, produced in part during Natasha's Artist as Instigator residency with the museum. It documents Renee and her neighbors organizing against the Fulton and Elliott Chelsea redevelopment project, a plan that involves demolishing the 19 existing buildings that hold 2,056 units of public housing and redeveloping the land with those units spread out amongst 6 new NYCHA buildings, with an additional 9 buildings constructed for mixed income housing, commercial retail, and community use. This plan will also convert these traditional public housing units into Section 8 project-based housing, moving building management into private hands and reducing the number of tenant rights and protections.
Hear this excerpt from Natasha's A Home Worth Fighting For, featuring Salinas Miranda, the Elliott Chelsea Homes Vice President, and Thomas Lunke, an urban planner from New York City.
The environmental impact of a demolition is extreme.
When you're demolishing 18 to 22 buildings, you are releasing embedded carbon into the atmosphere. Then, when you're constructing new buildings, you're bringing on a lot of raw material.
So much debris is going to be released into the air. Small, tiny little particles. We're going to be breathing it in.
With this proposed development, it is likely that that traffic will increase substantially because a lot of high-income people rely on cars.
Those new tenants that come in, they're going to come in after everything is said and done. We're the sacrifice bunch. They're claiming that they're helping us. It's not true.
Not only will you have the emotional trauma of seeing your home demolished before your eyes, but you will also be traumatized by the continual noise, vibration, dust that's flying into your new apartments because you're right next to another site that is being demolished and rebuilt. And is it really worth the environmental cost? We're tearing down the community to make room for a whole new population. And why, when we have a very stable community?
We are a thriving community of families, kids, a working class, retired folks, and along with our thriving community are our trees. I feel invigorated when I step out of my building. It makes me happy. To see so much life, so much green. The trees, they impact the community as a whole.
So the tree canopy, the larger and more mature the tree canopy, the more dust and particulate matter it absorbs.
In a city environment, there's constant pollution all over. And these trees are filtering out toxins. They went around the campus and they counted 370 mature trees. These are trees that's been there for over 50 years. So to remove them, it will harm the community, especially living within a mass demolition.
If constant demolition and displacement wreaks havoc on the land, where might we be able to find alternative modes of building shelter in symbiosis with our home? We know that there is wisdom in medicine in the way that our ancestors did it.
The Bahamian population came over and they built Miami and Key West and all of built up their labor, their ingenuity, their creativity with working with the terrain of Miami, because Miami was rocks. And these islanders knew how to build on those rocks. You couldn't stay anywhere else in Miami on our end, on the northern end. On the southern end, you went down in the swamp, down in South Dade, the Everglades, Coconut Grove, Homestead, Florida City. You had Perrine, Goose, Richmond Heights. Some of the blacks went way down south in the swamps. But Overtown was considered the city for the blacks. I remember my mom, even after we moved over to Liberty Square, catching the bus, going to clean people's houses on the beach. And they all had an ID card, a police ID. You had to be issued a police ID to work over there, And if they stopped you, you had to show an ID. And if you didn't, you would go to jail. And you couldn't be over across the bridge after 6 o'clock, after dark. If you were my color, you better not be caught dead over there. And that was Miami. That's where everyone seeks to go now, to that South Beach side where all the quote unquote action is and all the activities. And that's how we lived, and we were satisfied with that. Hence, urban renewal. They decided, the white community decided that they wanted to come in a little more. And they needed access to their side and not have to drive locally through over town and whatever to get to the beach, the tourists and whatever. And when urban renewal came through the heart of Overtown. Urban renewal came through and destroyed the community. Folks that own property, little stores, corner stores, the county made them give up their properties and their land under the guise of eminent domain. Most folks left, and that's where they came up with the idea okay, we could move them to this plot of land, unincorporated land, and they named it Liberty City.
Liberty City became the home place of Liberty Square, the first public housing development for Black people in the southern United States, affectionately known as the Pork and Beans Projects.
This massive urban renewal that cut through the heart of Overtown was fueled by two primary pieces of legislation: the 1949 Housing Act and the 1956 Federal Highways Act. The bills were in response to, and further perpetuated, vast changes to the land and who lived where. These changes began with the start of World War II. Due to the labor demands of the war industry, World War II saw massive numbers of migrants move from rural areas to urban areas, especially Black people. This was the start of the second wave of the Great Migration. When World War II ended in 1945, soldiers returned home to cities that were much more crowded than when they left, resulting in huge housing shortages across the country. State, local, and federal governments prioritized increasing the housing stock, driving the passage of the American Housing Act of 1949. This legislation had a praiseworthy supposed goal of, quote, a decent home and a suitable living environment for every American family, end quote, and authorized about $700 million for construction of close to 1 million units of public housing. However, it also reinforced racial housing inequities, with $1 billion for, quote, clearance of slums and blighted areas, end quote, and $500 million added to the Federal Housing Administration mortgage program, mortgages only available to white families because of redlining policies. The Housing Act of 1954 and subsequent amendments further increased inequities by cutting back on its original public housing goals and increasing funding for urban renewal programs.
One type of urban renewal program got even more funding and popular support: the construction of the interstate highway system. The project, costing over $243 billion when adjusted for inflation, claimed to focus on increasing road safety and economic development, but a less publicized goal was to facilitate so-called slum clearance in urban renewal. Highway construction not only displaced close to 500,000 households nationwide, it also served as physical reinforcements to segregation between predominantly white and predominantly Black neighborhoods. This was not unique to any one city. In Chicago, New York, New Orleans, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, Baltimore, Miami, and so many more cities across the country, the interstate highway system destroyed tens of thousands of churches, homes, local businesses, and green space. Between the increased availability of mortgages to primarily white families, the pollution of noise and highway construction, and the easier access between emerging suburbs and cities, white flight laid the groundwork for disinvestment in predominantly Black communities in every major American city.
So supermarkets started to close. Once they closed, I started looking around for garden space. There wasn't any in Chelsea. Gardening, I really wanted to do food. So I started learning. I started researching. I went to a place called Just Food, and they do symposiums, workshops on food. And then that same year, I saw something from NYCHA about NYCHA gardening community. So I ended up making a friend there. I met Cheryl Durant. Then I met her again at Kingsborough. They actually had an urban farm there where you could also do taking farming courses. So I ended up doing that there. And then I ended up taking classes for the first year at Farm School NYC. So that teaches you urban farming. So everything from training the trainer to understanding about the land, to crop planning, propagation, small designs, carpentry, preparing for winter. On my second year, I took the advanced courses along with an internship. And then after COVID, I ended up working at Kelly Street Garden, where I am now the garden manager. So we have an apothecary, we do seed saving, and I'm still a community gardener at the same time.
What Miss Kitt says about the intertwining of environmental and housing justice is also at play in Miami. Both Liberty City and Liberty Square are elevated on a ridge 12 feet above sea level, right in the middle of Miami. With parts of Miami Beach at 0 feet above sea level, and scientists expecting about 6 feet of sea level rise in the coming decades, coastal communities are in deeper jeopardy than ever. These conditions have fueled what organizers call climate gentrification, which in Miami includes the controversial conversion of traditional public housing into Section 8 mixed income housing.
Though developers claim that mixed income conversion would invoke a paradigm shift from racial and economic segregation to integration, the reality has not been so simple. After centuries of racialized capitalism that puts property rights over human dignity for Black people, another plan led by powerful, predominantly white institutions will never yield the equity or repair that our communities deserve. And many would argue that privatization has, in fact, been a continuation of putting profit over humanity.
All the people I see that are talking, that are planning this, don't live in this community. That's what's happening all over the Black communities in this county. This is our community. Why are you saying what it's going to be? Why are there no people that look like me? That little affordable housing slogan that you have, that's just a systematic way of removing the Black people from this community. You're systematically doing it, and you've been doing it for years.
That clip is from Raising Liberty Square, Katya Edson's 2023 documentary chronicling this mixed income conversion and the resident organizing that opposed the destruction of their community. Though residents were not able to stop the conversion, leaders like our narrator, Ms. Williams, continue to advocate for proper treatment of neighbors in the broader community. Listen to Ms. Williams describe the experience of some of the residents who have moved into the mixed income housing.
I'm over there at Liberty Square making sure these developers stop trying to screw over my people over there, Nedra. It's terrible. All these promises made. All these promises made. And they not keeping not one. And they thought we were going to go away. But that documentary just kept, I said, no, here's what you got in there. You got one more trick in the bag. They thought they were going to be in and out of here, listening to us go wah, 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 wah. And it's over by next project. There are about 17 of us. that meet weekly. We used to meet weekly. We're taking a break this summer. We used to meet every Thursday at 12 o'clock to discuss the issues that are still pending with housing. It's a different type of living. Right now, these people have apartments, they have porches, they have front yard, backyard. They put their clothesline out there, hang their clothes up. They can sit on their porch and watch their kids go up and down the sidewalk and all of that. Now they're in you've seen these buildings, they like housing. They even put senior citizens in these buildings, telling them in Liberty Square, they can't even put anything on the balcony.
Has there been any residents who were not from public housing move in yet?
Yes, they're there. And that's what they're hoping for, because of course the developers want that to turn into a profit-making venture. So the less of the low-income public housing folks are there, then it opens up. I did a 2-3 day walkthrough and talked to the residents, knocked on doors, and talked to the residents about their experience. And those that came from the outside love it. A brand new apartment, they love it. But then my public housing folks are having difficulties, transitioning, because it was public housing, but it was more accessible for them to get in and out than it is now.
Sounds like, just based on what I saw in the video, I mean, the lifestyle was very different and
different.
So there's not a sense of freedom. They were talking, you saw the cameras and just how
everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. The cameras are everywhere. The gates are locked. There's no porch to sit out. They tell you can't be sitting out in the hallway or your kids running up and down, playing up and down the stairs.
That's what kids do.
That's what they do. You saw in the development, the security guard was telling the kids to get off the grass. They were throwing football. They came to the meetings and offered the residents Section 8 vouchers. And that threw a monkey wrench in it, because my folks, my people, 70% took the, you saw in the van, took the vouchers. It's very restricted. So you can't fault them for the Section 8 thing. The Section 8 thing. But then I tried to explain to him, it becomes very difficult. You guys are in that Section 8, you took the voucher, and we're going to fight to make sure that the rules and the regulations are in place, that you could get a name and number and call, that if you out there and you want to get back, you could get back. Because what's going to happen, if this process is not set up, and that's what we're working on now, they'll get out the landlord, raise the rent. And down here in South Florida, property is over the roof. You in a house one day, they decided, I got somebody to buy this little old house here for $500,000. Cash money. These people coming in with cash. Every day I'm getting something posted on my gate whenever I get ready to sell my house. They'll take your as is.
They are relentless.
Relentless. Mm-hmm. And I told them, y'all taking that Section 8 housing? And I tried to explain to them, that is not your house, baby. Any day they can walk in and say, all right, lease up. I give you 30 days, because DeSantis don't back it down to 30. Used to be 60. He don't rule with his crazy stuff. The governor we have now down to 30-day notice.
People who lived in the apartments in the brownstones, what has happened is that some people have taken over, and 18 apartments then become one, because now a family's there and they threw everyone out. Like anywhere else, gentrification is overwhelming. It has made this property that I live on, the Elliott Chelsea houses and Fulton houses, the place that NYCHA seems to be under the impression is going to bankroll it. So we had since I'd spoken about this previously, that Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, there's a proposed demolition going on. Somehow they believe that the residents voted for it. We did not. They put around a survey that asked for did you want new construction and rezoning? That's not a demolition. And that was not explained. Simon Kowitsky, Vice President of Portfolio Planning, said it was a temperature check.
Both redevelopment projects have been led by the development conglomerate Related Companies. Related is one of the largest developers and private owners of affordable housing in the United States. And while it began as a business focused on so-called affordable housing, it has since grown into a $70 billion company with high-profile luxury development projects across the country, including the Hudson Yards redevelopment in New York City and the Row Fulton Market in Chicago. As a highly profitable conglomerate with dozens of redevelopment projects, the tools that they use, from Miami to New York City, all stem from the same strategy playbook, much like urban renewal did decades earlier. Here, community leader Marquise Jenkins and CUNY professor James Rodriguez describe some of the larger forces at play, again from Florentino's NYCHA-focused documentary.
Historically, what we have seen is public housing has always been in direct competition with the private sector. And the private sector have been looking for ways to get rid of the public housing problem since its inception.
As it stands, there is a massive push to privatize public housing, and there's also a really strong opposition from residents citywide against this vision.
They are testing out the demolition of public housing in one of the most expensive places to live in New York City. And if it is successful there, then it becomes the model for how they get rid of public housing all across New York City.
Section 9 is a federal housing program that enables local housing authorities to operate and manage public housing. And so it provides truly affordable housing outside of private market speculation for low-income and working class people all over the country. And so under the Section 8 program, real estate developers find a way to capture public funds. So I think these factors have sort of coalesced to create a movement across all levels of government that goes back several decades that essentially have called public housing a failure.
Jonathan Gouveia, Executive Vice President of NYCHA, has said that NYCHA will decide how the funds will be spent. So it doesn't say it's going to go into this development or the community. It will not only be us. We will be the first of the long-standing tenants that will be demolished, but don't think they're not going to move somewhere else. Gentrification, in many cases, outs long-term tenants of the neighborhood. So yes, it's harmed us in that it's made this a very expensive piece of real estate, that people are under the impression that we, the most long-standing tenants, should be put into 3 buildings on the Elliott Chelsea campus, and 70% would go to affordable housing, which I call unaffordable, and I hate the word, and luxury housing. And the same thing would be done on the Fulton Houses campus. 1 building would be 39 stories tall. That's out of context with this neighborhood as well. Also, the most important thing is that it tears apart a community. And that's the thing that is the most harmful, that has to be understood. The pressure is, we do this or else. The pressure is, we know what is best for you. You do not. We can speak for ourselves. We can fight for ourselves. And that's what we continue to do. We are against this proposed demolition. That is part of the reason I am now the Resident Association president of the Elliott Chelsea Houses. I ran on an anti-demolition campaign. Gentrification pressure will not just be us, it will be the neighborhood itself. There's businesses that are here that rely on us going in there and actually buying. So that's the acute gentrification pressure. The constant turnover in people, in lives, the thought that we do not value people and the lives they've lived and the homes they've made and the communities they've built.
Now it comes a time where you're going to have to stand up. I'm praying that with the guidance and the media and the attention that we're giving to the residents, involving them, communicating with them, we now know where all the residents that transition from how we know where they are.
Great.
We have addresses. We know how many want to return, how many want to stay out of the product, and how many want to come back, and have in place making the government, public housing, accountable for these residents. We aren't going away.
You come in this neighborhood, you ask for our votes, you ask us to believe in you, that you will represent us, but you do not listen to us. You do not hear us. You ignore. That's part of gentrification pressure as well. A decision of who is worthy and who is not, who should live here and who shouldn't. I think that's a great deal of it. Who should be allowed to live in this city, in this neighborhood? Who is it for? It should be for everyone.
This episode of Out of the Archives was curated, written, and edited by me, Jellystone Robinson.
And me, Liu Chen.
The episode was mixed and mastered by Najee Zayed Searcy. The theme song for Out of the Archives is Born in the Blues, written, performed, and recorded by the late Keith Hudson, a former Stateway Gardens resident. Out of the Archives is made possible through the generous support of the Gaylord and Dorothy Donnelly Foundation, the Illinois Arts Council Agency, the Kresge Foundation, the Julian Grace Foundation, Good Chaos, and the Chicago Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events.
We'd like to give one last huge thanks to our oral history narrators, Anna Williams and Renee Kitt, as well as our oral historians, Nedra Deadweiler and Olivia Glover. To hear the full interviews with Miss Williams and Miss Kitt, visit our public oral history archive at nphm.org/listen. You can also find more episodes of Out of the Archives at that same website or wherever you get your podcasts. An additional huge thank you to documentarians Natasha Florentino and Katya Essen for the work y'all are doing to shed light on these fights against privatization. For more information about these documentaries, as well as the displacement, development, and resistance discussed in this episode, check out the sources in the episode notes. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to sharing more stories with you during our next season.